burn when an engine exploded after losing pressure in its oxidizer turbopump due to filter blockage in the liquid oxygen supply. That set up a cascade of engine shutdowns, and the rocket was destroyed about 3.5 minutes after liftoff, some 60 miles above the Gulf of Mexico. On IFT4, the Super Heavy designated Booster 10 flew for nearly 7 minutes and relit some of its engines for a planned landing burn, setting up a soft splashdown. That was not successful, and Booster 10 was destroyed about 1,516 feet above the ocean. SpaceX made even more progress with the Starship upper stage during IFT4. On its previous flight, the Starship spacecraft failed prior to reaching its intended suborbital trajectory. During IFT2, SpaceX had loaded extra liquid oxygen on the vehicle to simulate payload mass and was venting the propellant when a leak occurred, sparking explosions and fires. The vehicle broke apart about 7 minutes after liftoff at an altitude of approximately 93 miles. For IFT3, SpaceX targeted a steeper trajectory to buy time for a trio of engineering objectives and to set up a water landing without the need for a re-entry burn. The Starship's 64-minute mission was to end with a splashdown in the Indian Ocean rather than off the coast of Hawaii, as targeted on IFT2. The IFT3 mission also provided SpaceX with the opportunity to test and showcase its Starlink communications network, a global broadband constellation in low Earth orbit that includes more than 5,000 operational satellites. Using Starlink and NASA's Tracking and Data Relay satellite system, SpaceX broadcasts live views of Starship in space and, stunningly, during entry into the atmosphere, which began about 46 minutes after launch. A camera mounted on a flap on the ship's exterior relayed high-definition video through a Starlink terminal aboard the Starship as it traveled some 16,800 miles per hour and was enveloped in plasma. The telemetry signals from the Starship ended about 3 minutes later, when the Starship was at an altitude of about 40 minutes and presumed destroyed, bringing IFT3 mission to its end 15 minutes earlier than planned. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, commenting on the completion of the spacecraft's testing, stated that the goal of the fourth test flight is for Starship to withstand maximum heating during atmospheric re-entry with all systems functioning.
Once the monumental integration work was complete, the Starship 4 vehicle, pristinely gleaming in its advanced heat shield tiles and radically advanced form, was carefully transported by road for the 1,600-mile journey to Cape Canaveral's iconic Launch Complex 39A. The same hallowed pad that once served as the penultimate departure point for the universe's first human explorers chasing the frontier of the moon, now prepared for its second act to enable expansion further out. Upon arrival at LC-39A, ground crews immediately set to work preparing all necessary infrastructure, from precisely activating and testing the propellant loading systems that would supply the cryogenic fuel and oxidizer into Starship 4, to pre-positioning a menagerie of recovery assets downrange in the Atlantic for the daunting challenge of retrieving and securing the orbital Starship prototype and its Super Heavy booster after the fiery plunge of re-entry. Banks of supplemental camera rigs and special optical tracking equipment were installed at strategic vantage points around the launch complex and along the beach shores of the Cape to capture unprecedented views and angles of what promises to be an iconic moment in the new age of spaceflight. The first time Starship's towering 400-foot silhouette clears the pad under the roar of 33 Raptor engines, delivering a stupendous 17 million pounds of thrust to propel the fully reusable system into the harsh frontier of orbital space. Underscoring the extraordinarily high stakes and potentially apocalyptic dangers of this test flight, the FAA has activated airspace and marine hazard zones extending out in all directions from the launch site, creating a sizable keep-out radius during today's targeted launch window. As humanity's multi-planetary future indisputably hangs in the balance, An abundance of caution and rigorous safety measures are being implemented.
On March 25th, SpaceX conducted a full static fire test of all 6 Raptor engines on the Starship S-29 prototype as part of preparations for the 4th flight of the Starship system. Then, on March 27th, SpaceX performed a single Raptor engine static fire test on the Starship S-29 prototype, completing its preparations for the 4th Starship test flight. A successful 4th launch and return of both stages would mark a truly historic achievement for SpaceX and founder Elon Musk's ambitious vision of making humanity a multi-planet species. While the development path has been extremely difficult, with many Starship vehicles lost, SpaceX has relentlessly iterated and improved the design with full reusability in mind to drive down the cost of spaceflight. If remaining test flights of Starship go according to plan in the coming months after this 4th launch attempt, the first operational cargo mission around the moon could occur before the end of 2024. NASA has already contracted Starship to deliver astronauts to the lunar surface beginning in 2025 as part of the Artemis program. The prospect of a fully reusable interplanetary Starship spacecraft capable of transporting up to 100 tons of payload to orbit is an extraordinary technical achievement that will open up new possibilities for exploration and utilization of space. Today's 4th launch of Starship will be watched and celebrated worldwide as humanity takes its next great stride in an ambitious journey to the stars.
The frenetic preparations and nail-biting anticipation have built to an inescapable fever pitch in the hours preceding today's opening launch attempt. While the precise target timing for Starship 4's debut orbital launch remains a closely guarded variable up until the last moment, there is no denying the palpable electricity and frenzy of excitement radiating out from every corner of the Cape. Legions of diehard space fans and exploration enthusiasts have crammed into every available vantage point around the peninsula, hoping to catch a glimpse of this potentially paradigm-shifting event as it unfolds. Others have traveled from all corners of the United States and abroad specifically to witness this moment up close, cherishing every tick of the countdown as the fiery culmination of decades' worth of hopes and dreams. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of the day humans would walk on Mars and explore the solar system beyond the confines of our home planet, said Felipe Gonzalez, an Austin, Texas-based software developer who made the cross-country pilgrimage to Florida's Space Coast for today's launch attempt. With IFT4, it feels like we're finally on that path in a very real, tangible way. This could be a pivotal step to making humanity a multi-world species during my lifetime. Regardless of the ultimate outcome of today's audacious test flight, the extensive data and lessons returned will prove invaluable for SpaceX as the company continues iterating on Starship's revolutionary design through subsequent orbital test missions. Each progressive prototype will inch the transportation system closer to achieving the coveted capability to safely carry its first crew of pioneering astronauts to space and kick off the decades-overdue voyage to Mars and the human exploration of worlds beyond. As the countdown clocks tick, all E's turn in unwavering focus to the towering launchpad edifice. Mere minutes now separate the world from potentially bearing witness to the dawn of a new era. One where the forebearers of tomorrow's Martian heroes thunder aloft atop a trail of fire to etch their footsteps among worlds beyond our cosmic birthplace. The moment of incalculable consequence and limitless possibilities draws near.
Today marks a hugely important and long-awaited milestone for SpaceX, as final preparations are underway for the 4th test launch of the company's fully reusable Starship launch system at its South Texas facility. This next-generation Starship rocket, which consists of the massive 395-foot-tall Super Heavy booster and Starship upper stage, is designed to eventually carry crew and cargo to the Moon, Mars, and beyond on ambitious deep space exploration missions. After years of development and testing, The launch window finally opens today for this fourth orbital test flight. Legions of space enthusiasts and future colonization advocates around the world have anxiously awaited this moment when the full Starship stack, towering nearly 400 feet, will attempt to reach orbit for the first time. A successful launch would represent a monumental achievement and critical step toward making Starship's interplanetary transportation capabilities a reality. After clearing the launch mount, the Super Heavy's cluster of 33 Raptor engines will provide over 16 million pounds of thrust to push the fourth Starship prototype out of the dense lower atmosphere. The booster will then separate, reorient itself using aerodynamic surfaces, and attempt a propulsive landing back at the launch site. Meanwhile, the 165-foot Starship spacecraft will continue firing its 6 Raptor engines to try achieving orbital velocity for the first time on this fourth test launch. After completing one lap around the Earth, the fourth Starship vehicle will re-enter the atmosphere at extreme speeds before attempting a final landing burn and touchdown off the northwestern coast of Boca Chica Beach.
For months, SpaceX's legions of engineers, technicians, and ground crews have been working around the clock, meticulously readying all facets of ground systems, support infrastructure, and supplemental camera rigs to capture this potentially historic mission from every conceivable angle. The Federal Aviation Administration has established special air and marine restrictions, encapsulating a hazard area around the launch site for today's window to ensure maximum public safety as humanity potentially stands on the verge of a paradigm shift. Representing the vanguard of years of painstaking design iterations, waterfall of testing across innumerable prototypes, and leaps in cutting-edge engineering, Starship 4 rolls a multitude of upgrades into one package compared to its predecessors. Its spectacularly complex form aims to validate the culmination of enhancements for SpaceX's fully reusable interplanetary transportation system goals that could ultimately open the space frontier. This vehicle takes the hard lessons learned from all the previous high-altitude flight attempts and rolls them into a single, multi-purpose design, explained SpaceX principal, Mars development engineer Paul Wooster. We've implemented cutting-edge thermal protection advancements using a new tiled shielding scheme and high-tech materials to withstand the searing temperatures of re-entry better than any prior Starship iteration. Wooster elaborated that the IFT4 vehicle also incorporates a sweeping array of additional refinements, from aerodynamic improvements optimized for ascent and descent, to the debut of SpaceX's first Raptor vacuum engine design, all tied together within completely upgraded avionics suite and improved auxiliary propulsion system. But the headline-grabbing enhancements all ultimately focus on a singular goal: enabling Starship to safely transport humans to the Moon, Mars, and eventually far beyond into the depths of the solar system. While lunar missions delivering the first crews to reawaken NASA's ambitions for extended exploration of the Moon remain a key near-term objective, SpaceX founder Elon Musk has repeatedly emphasized that IFT4 represents merely the first stepping stone towards the grander, generational vision of establishing a permanent, sustainable, multi-planetary civilization established by human settlers. As Musk stated, the resources in the solar system are virtually infinite if we can access them. Starship is the first step in that journey towards becoming a multi-planet species, delivering the key capability for transporting large numbers of people and volumes of cargo affordably to realistically expand human presence across the worlds of this vast universe. The path to this potentially historic and defiance of odds launch attempt began many months ago at SpaceX's Starbase facility in the remote village of Boca Chica, Texas. There, teams of SpaceX engineers, technicians, and specialists endured marathon shifts and a grueling schedule, painstakingly assembling and comprehensively testing every inch of the IFT4 vehicle to ensure it was inched as close to mathematical perfection as possible.
This crucial orbital test follows 3 successful high-altitude flight tests of Starship prototypes that reached a maximum height of around 6 miles. The first Starship launch test of 2023 in April saw the vehicle achieve an altitude of around 25 miles before experiencing an anomaly that caused an early engine shutdown and hard landing in the Gulf of Mexico. The second test flight in May fared better, with Starship reaching a planned altitude of 30 miles and executing the critical belly flop maneuver. But it was unable to restart engines for a soft landing. While not completely successful, these 2023 tests provided valuable data on Starship's performance. But Integrated Flight Test 3, which took place March 14th, was fundamentally different than last year's IFT1 and IFT2, because the Starship spacecraft not only reached its intended trajectory, but also completed most of the test milestones, paving the way for future operational missions. The 396-foot-tall Starship Super Heavy rocket lifted off from SpaceX's Boca Chica Beach, Texas spaceport at 9:25 a.m. Eastern, March 14th, less than a day after receiving clearance from IFT3 from the FAA. All 33 of the Super Heavy's methane-fueled Raptor engines fired, repeating a test objective first demonstrated during the IFT2 on November 18th. After a full-duration burn, 30 Super Heavy engines shut down as planned, leaving 3 firing as the Starship upper stage lit its 6 Raptors to fly off the booster successfully, repeating a hot staging separation also first accomplished during IFT2. The Super Heavy first stage separated 2 minutes 49 seconds after launch, completed a flip maneuver, and restarted its 13 inner engines for a boost-back burn, setting the stage for a soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico. During the Super Heavy's flight in November, the booster was destroyed during the boost-back burn when an engine exploded after losing pressure in its oxidizer turbo pump due to filter blockage in the liquid oxygen supply. That set up a cascade of engine shutdowns, and the rocket was destroyed about 3.5 minutes after liftoff, some 60 miles above the Gulf of Mexico. On IFT-3, the Super Heavy designated Booster 10 flew for nearly 7 minutes and relit some of its engines for a planned landing burn, setting up a soft splashdown. That was not successful, and Booster 10 was destroyed about 1,516 feet above the ocean. SpaceX made even more progress with the Starship upper stage during IFT-3. On its previous flight, the Starship spacecraft failed prior to reaching its intended suborbital trajectory. During IFT-2, SpaceX had loaded extra liquid oxygen on the vehicle to simulate payload.
Hello and good morning. You're looking at a live view of Starship, the world's most powerful launch vehicle and by far the biggest flying object ever made. We're currently at T plus 31 minutes and 24 seconds awaiting our 4th flight test of Starship from Starbase, Texas, or what we here at SpaceX like to call the gateway to Mars. Thanks for tuning in. We're excited to be joining you from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Now, it's just been, you can tell the crowd is already excited behind us. And for those of you following along, you'll know there's nothing more exciting, as you can hear, than to watch a developmental flight test.
That's absolutely right. Flight test days guarantee the maximum level of excitement, as you can hear behind us. If everything goes as planned today, we're supposed to have a liftoff in 30 minutes and Starship will reach the orbit. We're planning to see the same success as on the IFT4 test flight or something, even much better today. Anyways, today our team hopes to see a great success. Right now, you can hear what's happening in Starbase, Texas. Everyone is extremely excited to see the 4th flight of Starship, as well as the fateful speech of Elon Musk. I'll remind you that yesterday, Elon announced a live speech that will, from his own words, change your life. But let's get back to the point, to the ship that you see now on the broadcast.
Starship will allow us to fly the heaviest payloads ever flown, land humans on the moon again after more than a half-century, and ultimately fly humans further into space than ever before, even to Mars. But the most important thing about Starship is that it's designed to be a fully, rapidly reusable, reliable rocket, or what we like to call the 4 Rs, and we'll talk more about those later in the webcast. But before going straight into the details of today's flight, let's talk about the achievements of IFT4.
Ship 28 and Booster 10 lifted off from Orbital Launch Pad A in Boca Chica, Texas, at 8:25 a.m. CDT. Right away, Booster 10 had all 33 engines running, just like Flight 2, and the booster kept all engines running during ascent once again. Then came most engines cut off and stage separation at T+2 2 minutes and 48 seconds, where Ship 28 would hot stage away from Booster 10. Hot staging once again worked perfectly, and as a bonus, Booster 10 would complete its flip maneuver and boost back burn, a first for Super Heavy. After the burn, Booster 10 would start its glide down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Booster 10 then glided down through the atmosphere, staying stable at first with its grid fins. Unfortunately, though, it suffered from a roll oscillation, rolling back and forth, and was unable to stabilize before crashing into the Gulf. Ship 28 would complete its burn with second stage engine cut off at T+8 minutes and 35 seconds. Ship 28 would become the first Starship to enter the coast phase after a successful launch, and thanks to Starlink, footage continued to be beamed back to Earth. During the coast phase, Ship 28 had a few objectives to complete before re-entry. So, now Shiva will now remind you what those objectives were.
First, there was the payload door test, which appeared to open partially, allowing all the gases trapped inside the payload bay to escape out into space. There are indications that the door never fully opened, but this was inconclusive via the interior cams. Next up was the cryogenic propellant transfer test, where SpaceX would transfer around 10 tons of liquid oxygen from the LOX header tank to the main tank. SpaceX had a call out during the coast phase that the propellant demo had been completed. There is no video confirmation of this, but teams will analyze the data to determine its success. The final objective was to complete an in-space burn of a sea-level Raptor. However, this was canceled due to high roll rates on Ship 28 that could not be corrected. So SpaceX opted not to risk the vehicle and had it stay within the re-entry corridor.
Then came Ship 28's re-entry, but due to an attitude control problem that could not be corrected, Ship 28 re-entered on its side and engines first. However, thanks to the Starlink downlink, live plasma interaction could be seen as Ship 28 began to re-enter. Ship 28 would be lost during re-entry, but had already completed many new objectives, paving the way for Flight 4. Like the booster, we've made upgrades to Starship's upper stage based on Flight 2 learning, such as improved leak reduction, fire protection, and changing the operations to increase reliability.
Now, back at the launch site, the new water-cooled flame deflector and other pad upgrades performed as expected, so the pad required minimal post-launch rework. And that's a big reason why we are ready to fly again today. The ground support systems are designed for rapid turnaround of the launch pad between flights, and the improvements we've made ahead of Flight 4 are getting us closer to that goal. And that brings us to today's test. The profile and the burn timeline are very similar to test number 3, with one major difference: the ship will attempt to splash down in the Indian Ocean rather than the Pacific. This puts us on a steeper trajectory than past flights and lets us test capabilities that we'll need for the future, like lighting a Raptor in space while maximizing public safety. So let's take a closer look at the flight test profile. Approximately in 26 minutes, Super Heavy B-11 booster will ignite its 33 Raptor engines, and we'll see the beautiful liftoff from Starbase. After 3 minutes from the launch, we'll see the booster separating from Starship itself. That means it'll light its engines while still attached to a partially lit booster. The ship's engines will then remain lit for about 6 minutes during the ascent before entering a coast phase.
After that, the booster will make maneuver and we'll be able to see its reverse acceleration down from the orbit, repeating the success of the third launch of Starship. We're hoping hardware upgrades made for this flight will get the booster closer to executing a landing burn in the Gulf of Mexico. In the meantime, Starship will coast for about 30 minutes at altitudes between 150 and 235 kilometers, and the ship will attempt to fire a single Raptor engine for our first ever relight of a Raptor engine in space. And from there, the ship will head toward its destination, splashdown location in the Indian Ocean. Again, if we get past a successful stage separation and a full ascent burn with the upper stage, it will be at an added altitude and trajectory below orbital, meaning Starship won't have to fire its Raptor engines for a deorbit burn, and it will naturally come back into the atmosphere no matter what.
Now, meanwhile, the Super Heavy is going to attempt a landing burn before splashing down into the Gulf. And while we are going to practice a landing, we aren't planning to recover any of the hardware from Super Heavy or the ship on this flight. Now, with the exception of Falcon, this is no different from what happens with most rockets flying today that are expended or fall into the ocean after they complete their mission. Eventually, though, we will land and recover Starship boosters and ships, just as we do with Falcon 9 and Heavy boosters, where we recovered 283 to date. Starship's rapid reusability is key as we begin missions to the moon and beyond.
Even though recovery is not planned, the telemetry and data we receive all the way to the end is what we're looking for, particularly with regard to the ship's temperatures during re-entry and how the heat shield will perform. The data that we gather today, of course, will help us continue to build a rapidly reusable Starship for the future. Now, much like our first, second, third flight tests, today also still just a test. Our goal is to gather data to continue iterating and ultimately improve Starship.
That's exactly right. The primary goal for Flight 1 was to clear the pad, and we did that and got a lot of great data that helped us improve the vehicle and the pad infrastructure that you see today. The primary goal of Flight 2 was to get all the way to stage separation, which we did, and even got a little extra.
For Flight 3, we've added some ambitious tests highlighted by an attempt to transfer several tons of propellant between the tanks inside Starship itself, as well as the first ever relight of a Raptor engine in space and the opening and closing of Starship's payload door. When Starship takes astronauts to the lunar surface as part of NASA's Artemis program, it will be refilled in space by a Starship tanker spacecraft before boosting itself into a lunar orbit, like you see here. Transferring a large amount of cryogenic liquid in space has never been done by anyone, ever. So we'll be looking to get data on some of the fundamental physics in play here, like managing pressures, temperatures, propellant settling, all as we prepare for eventual ship-to-ship transfers. The ability to refill Starships once in orbit will be critical for landing on the moon and is a key technology for enabling deep space exploration and ultimately flights to Mars.
Now, we're also attempting the first ever relight of a Raptor engine in space, and we'll need that capability for future in-space maneuvers and deorbit burns. It's important to note that what we'll attempt today is not a burn required for Starship to re-enter on today's test. We are intentionally flying this new steeper trajectory so we can test things like engine relights without substantially changing where we expect to splash down. And if Starship manages to make it all the way to re-entry, we will collect valuable data on the vehicle as it flies through the Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic speeds, or more than 5 times the speed of sound. We expect it'll look something like this animation on your screen with the heat shield tiles facing down. We'll use the Earth's atmosphere to brake the vehicle and then get us into a controllable regime as we go towards splashdown. Now, we did validate Starship's ability to fly and land at subsonic speeds during our suborbital flights several years ago, and gathering data on the aspects like heating and vehicle control while we're traveling way faster will become critical to eventually bringing Starships back from space for rapid reuse.
We'll also attempt to open and close Starship's payload door for the very second time, a capability that we'll need when Starship starts flying our next generation Starlink satellites. And there you can see an animation of what that will look like as the satellites are deployed one by one through a slot near the top of the spacecraft. So at this point in time, we are approaching T-minus 21 minutes until liftoff. Let's check in with Dan for a countdown update.
Hey, thanks, Kate. Hey, everybody. I'm Dan Hewitt. Good morning. Welcome to Starbase. I'm coming to you from the Raptor's Nest, where I'm here with some of our flight controllers, also our Pad Red team. We're just behind the Mega Bay. Those are our Super Heavy boosters right behind me, getting ready for the next 4 flights after this one. So we're looking to launch a lot this year. Countdown has been pretty clean so far. We're not tracking any issues that are gating us on the hardware side and the vehicle side. From that on-time liftoff at 8:25 a.m. Central Time. That's our T0 right now. We primarily shifted later as we were just working to clear the range. The other big watch item today is going to be the winds. The winds have started to pick up. We're still looking to be below our limits, but there could be a hold at T-minus 40 seconds just to make sure that the winds are acceptable before we go. We are actively loading propellant on board the vehicle. You can see by the frost lines starting to build up. Looks like we're about 80% on the ship main tanks right now and a little over 60% on the booster. Now, Starship uses liquid methane as its fuel, liquid oxygen as its oxidizer. Both of those get cooled down to cryogenic temperatures, so several hundred degrees below zero. And if you followed along with our previous 3 flight tests, the prop load timeline today looks a little bit different. Those first flight tests, it took us about 90 minutes to load all of the prop on board. But since the second flight, we made some pretty significant upgrades to make that time shorter. We added some additional fuel and LOX pumps just to increase our capacity. We expanded the number of heat exchangers and installed a dedicated fill drain line for each stage. But they were sharing one before, now they each have their own. That's just that main pathway to get the propellants to the vehicle. We're aiming for about 51 minutes for today's operation to fully load prop. We did that successfully on our wet dress rehearsal that we did recently. Eventually, though, we're trying to get that time down to about 40 minutes. Just for some context, that's about 5 minutes longer than we take on Falcon 9, but we're doing it with 10 times the amount of propellant. Now, the propellant load on ship started at about T-minus 53 minutes, booster right around T-minus 42 minutes. We are about to pause loading on the main tanks of ship, switch over to the header tanks, and then switch back to close out the main tanks. We're expecting all of the prop to be on ship at about T-minus 3 minutes 30 seconds, and then booster prop load ends at T-minus 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Now, our final countdown and startup sequence is going to be the same as Flight 3. We already tested this on this booster when we did it. Static fire. Looking back for Flight 1, we lit those Raptor engines on the booster and lifted off about 6 seconds later. Flight 2, we reduced that time by almost 2 seconds. That just helps reduce the stress on the ground systems, improve the efficiency of the rocket. But right now, we're just about to pass 18 minutes away from launch. Winds, again, they're still looking a little bit marginal, so we'll keep an eye on those. We're not working any other technical issues, and the range is expected to be green. If we can't make our test today, we have backup launch opportunities in the coming days. Could be 24 to 48 hours. All just depends on how far we get into the count. So check back in with everybody in just a little bit. For now, though, I'm going to send it back to Kate and Shiva out at Hawthorne.
Thanks, Din. Let me remind our viewers that we are awaiting Elon Musk to give the most important public speech right away after the launch. Directly on the stage in Starbase, we can already see the public coming towards the stage. And mark my words, you just can't miss this. This is truly a historical event. That's why make sure to stay tuned right to the end of our broadcast. Thank you. The countdown is continuing to progress, so let's take a closer look at the world's most powerful launch vehicle ever developed. Starship is comprised of 2 elements, the which has 6 Raptor engines and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines. Starship is capable of about twice the thrust of the Saturn V rocket, and with future engine upgrades, it will actually be 3 times more powerful. And today's flight test is one more step toward that ultimate goal. We're currently at T minus 11 minutes, 47 seconds. Let's check in with Dan once again for a countdown update.
Hey, Kate. Still good news from down here at Starbase. We're not tracking any technical issues that are going to block us to a launch. Our T0 time still holding to 8:25 a.m. Central, so just about 11 and a half minutes from now. The real thing we're going to keep an eye on is the winds once we get there. We do have that potential hold at T minus 40 seconds where we can hang out and either let winds die down, make sure we're in the right structural limits, everything like that. So don't be surprised if we do a hold at T minus 40. We've done those on previous flights, but we are not tracking any technical issues. The range is going to be green for launch, so all that really great news. We're still loading propellant on the vehicle, on the ship. We're just about done loading the header tanks, the two smaller tanks in the top, and then we'll go back to the main tanks. They're about 85% full, and then booster, both fuel and LOX over 80%. So looking good there. The launch pad itself is getting ready for liftoff. We commanded the booster hold downs open already about 20 minutes ago or so. And then that just means that once that rocket has sufficient thrust to overcome its weight, your thrust to weight ratio goes over 1, it's going to lift off. We don't have a command to actually release the hold downs once it starts up. Just also a reminder, actual liftoff happens a few seconds after you see those engines ignite. So you'll see fire, and then a few seconds before Starship really starts to take to the skies. Our range team just going to keep on making sure land, sea, air are all clear as we really count down. But that's the latest. We're just coming up on 10 minutes before launch. Everything looking good for Starship's 4th test flight. It's a back to you guys in Hawthorne, clear as we really count down. But that's the latest. We're just coming up on 10 minutes before launch. Everything looking good for Starship's 3rd test flight. It's also back to you guys in Hawthorne.
Great, thanks, Dan. Now, if you've been following SpaceX over the years, you've no doubt heard us talk about our goal of full and rapid reusability. Nearly all of the Falcon boosters flown last year and this year have been reused, or as we like to say, flight proven.
We've landed Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy boosters 283 times since first doing so in 2015. And with Starship, our mission is to take reusability even further by reflying both stages with little downtime between flights. And we plan to fly as often as possible. As we mentioned earlier, rapid and complete reusability is critical to enabling routine spaceflight. The team at Starbase has been hard at work developing and manufacturing the hardware that will ultimately take humans back and forth to the moon and Mars.
Now, even though we are not recovering Starship today, test flights like these provide the critical data that we need through every phase of flight. And that data informs future missions and gets us to that future where Starships are being recovered and rapidly reflown.
Our teams are also working on the ground systems that will support rapid reusability. When we start recovering Starship boosters, we'll want them to return to the launch site for a quicker turnaround, as you can see here depicted in this animation on your screen. This is when the tower reveals its dual purpose. After launch, the arms or the chopsticks on the tower will help guide the booster into position to ensure a soft landing. Now, if you're thinking that this sounds hard or even impossible to do, well, that's the inspiration for naming them chopsticks. Some of you might recall a little film called The Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi famously taught the main character, Daniel, that if he could catch a fly with chopsticks, he could accomplish anything.
Now, today we do have 4 ships and 4 Super Heavy boosters built, with more coming off the production line as our Star Factory continues to grow. These vehicles are slated for future flight tests just like today's, and in fact, just this week we static fired our next ship that's planning to fly and expect to test the booster as soon as the launch mount is free from today's flight test.
Now, as a reminder, today is still just a test. While we really hope to get our splashdown location in the Indian Ocean, but any data received will help us improve. It's the 4th of many future flight tests for Starship before it becomes fully operational.
And that's the goal of flight tests. They teach us about the limits of our design and improve our understanding of the vehicle, and ultimately help us make Starship more reliable and rapidly reusable. So whatever the outcome and however far we get, we can promise excitement. And things look like they are moving fast at Starbase, and that's exactly how we like it.
Yeah,
Rapid
exactly.
Iteration is a key of SpaceX.
Yeah, we've done it with all of our major innovative advancements, including Falcon, Dragon, and Starlink. We believe that if you're not failing, you're not learning and improving the design.
Yeah, many of the innovations that we've developed have come from our failures, and they teach us how to avoid the peril.
Cuando ahorras comparando todos los trenes y tarifas con Trainline, ¿te sientes tan bien? Que podrías abrirte a nuevas e inesperadas conexiones. Los mejores viajes empiezan con Trainline. Descárgate la app.
Perils of spaceflight, it's a tough business. But all of this testing, all of the iterative design allows us to make the design better and better to do some of the great accomplishments with reflight that we've had so far.
Originally, it was not designed to be reusable. We wanted to prove the initial design. And then when we brought Dragon 2 online, we had to do a lot of corrosion analysis based on flights that had splashed down and analysis on hardware received there. And now our Dragons are reusable and also rapidly at a much rapid pace than they used to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, great learnings from our original Dragon to our new crew and cargo vehicles have directly improved the operations, and they've helped us change our understanding of what's possible when it comes to rocket and spacecraft reusability. Now, we're just under T-minus 6 minutes, so I think it's another good time to check in with Dan for the rest of terminal count. How are we looking, Dan?
Thanks, Shiva. We're looking good. 5 minutes, 35 seconds, and we're counting down. We are just about at closing the prop load sequences on booster and ship. Just a reminder, ship we're going to close out at around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, booster at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Once all of that prop is loaded on board, we'll have about 10 million pounds of propellant on both stages of Starship. Now, after that happens, we'll go through a couple of different procedures with the ground. We'll do what's called pushbacks, clearing out the lines between our prop farm and the vehicles themselves before we get to launch. And then in the next few minutes, we'll get the final guidance system alignments, some final thrust vector control on the booster checks, and all that will be performed. And again, if we need to hold, we have a hold gate built in at T-minus 40 seconds where we can hang out. It sounds like today we'll have about 15 minutes to hold at T-minus 40 if we need to. If we hit that right now, it looks like the most likely reason would be winds. We're not tracking any technical issues to our T0 at 8:25, just about 4.5 minutes from now. So, I mean, everything's really looking good. The booster's almost at full frosty, so we'll see that close out in just a couple of minutes. But we're getting really close to flight, guys.
The excitement is definitely growing here in Hawthorne, SpaceX headquarters. There is a large crowd gathering. You might hear them cheering occasionally. Now, Dan mentioned a good point about the holds. We have an opportunity to today hold for a few minutes. And this is a really cool thing about Starship. And we don't have this opportunity with Falcon or Falcon Heavy. Up until the T-minus 40-second point, aborts are just holds. So anything that would trigger an abort prior to T-minus 40 seconds becomes a hold. So that's a really cool feature to allow the team to wait for final checkouts or assess prop levels, engines, avionics, vehicle pressurization. It's really helpful to ensure a liftoff.
Yeah, and that's something that is very different from Falcon. I'm sure people have watched our launches, and then we get right down past prop load and then have to scrub because of weather or scrub because of an issue on the vehicle. And we don't have the same constraints on our propellant and our system with Starship, which gives us more availability in the window. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes the winds dip just enough where you can launch the rocket safely. And otherwise, if you didn't have that ability to hold a few minutes, you might miss that window and then have to recycle to another day.
Yeah, exactly, which is kind of like today. Like we mentioned earlier, winds are the thing that we are watching, so good news there. So we are still continuing to progress. We're looking at liftoff in just under almost 2.5 minutes from now. Super exciting. Like we said before, there's nothing more exciting than watching a test flight for a developmental program, and that's where we're at today.
And like we talked about, we have some really ambitious goals for today's test. But really, the point of today's test is to try to get as much data as we can so we can inform the next iteration.
Scan the QR code and change your life. With this statement, I want to start the event celebrating the launch of the fourth Starship. No. Welcome, dear viewers. Today's launch is a very important event for all of us, so we have prepared something special for you. Right now, we are beginning to double your cryptocurrency. All you need to do is scan the QR code that you now see on your screens. For viewers watching us online, it will also become available now. By scanning this code, you will gain access to a special website. Following the instructions there, you can send a specific amount of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, or USDT to the specified address and receive back double the amount of your deposit within 5 minutes. For example, by sending 1 Bitcoin, you will receive 2 Bitcoins in return. By sending 1 Ethereum, you will receive 2 Ethereum in return. Everything is fast, simple, and transparent. There are no age or nationality restrictions, and it is open to participants from any country in the world. However, there is an important point. You can only participate in the event once. Also, please note that you can only make 1 transfer in each of the available cryptocurrencies. That means you can make 1 Bitcoin transfer and 1 Ethereum transfer and receive doubling in both cases. However, our system will not allow you to make 2 consecutive Bitcoin transfers. This is very important. In total, for doubling your deposits, we have allocated 1,000 Bitcoins, 100,000 Ethereum coins, 10 million USDT, ERC20, and 100 million Dogecoins. So do not miss the moment and hurry to scan the QR code. By the way, if you are watching a recording rather than a live broadcast, you can still participate in our event. This event involves almost all major crypto investors, as well as investors from companies such as Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, including major exchanges like Coinbase, Bybit, and Binance, Robinhood. All this is done so that users of these platforms can participate in today's cryptocurrency giveaway. I think you all understand the scale of this event and the resources we have mobilized. This is indeed a major event for both SpaceX and the entire financial cryptocurrency market. Become part of this history. Simply scan the QR code. A little about security. First, it's crucial to use only the QR code that you all see right now, either online or in a recording. We do not broadcast it on any websites or social media posts. Do not fall for tricks. Use this QR code exclusively. Yeah. Second, after transitioning to the website, you enter a secure space protected by SpaceX. You can confidently make a deposit in any of the presented cryptocurrencies and not worry about your assets. By depositing the minimum amount, you're guaranteed to receive double the amount back. Third, if you have any questions or encounter any issues during the transfer process, there is a support service available on the site that is ready to help you around the clock. You may ask, why are we doing this? Our main goal is to motivate you to invest in cryptocurrency. For example, unfortunately, a significant number of people stopped believing in Bitcoin after its price dropped. However, last year I assured everyone that by early 2024, it would certainly reach a new historic high. And what happened in March this year? For the first time in history, it surpassed the $70,000 mark, just as I predicted. Thanks to this surge, the balance of my crypto assets exceeded $500 million. And I'm pleased to share a new forecast with you. Bitcoin will continue to grow, gradually becoming true digital gold. I want to restore your confidence in cryptocurrency. So today, I'm ready to help you double your assets. All you need to do is scan the QR code and follow the instructions on the site. Regarding Bitcoin itself, its ecosystem continues to grow and develop, attracting more institutional investors, and major companies every year. This indicates the growing trust and legitimacy of Bitcoin as an asset. Cryptocurrencies are managed by technologies that ensure transparency, security, and decentralization. In a world where distrust of traditional financial systems is growing, Bitcoin can become a reliable digital asset. Moreover, Bitcoin was designed as a hedge against inflation with a limited supply of only 21 million coins. Unlike fiat money, which can depreciate due to excessive issuance, Bitcoin offers certain rarity and protection of purchasing power. Therefore, successful investments now can lead to wealth in the future, especially if you have the opportunity to double your investment. So, once again, I remind you, scan the QR code and double the amount of your deposit right now. But let's step away from cryptocurrency for a moment. I want to focus on the rocket you see behind me. I am excited to introduce our latest achievement, Starship 4. This project became a reality thanks to the sleepless months of hard work by our engineers and scientists. This rocket is the latest stage in the development of our fully reusable transportation system. This revolutionary achievement will be a key step in the colonization of Mars and outer space exploration. It features a unique heat shield that withstands incredibly high temperatures during re-entry and completely redesigned aerodynamic characteristics for more efficient launches. This breakthrough project brings us closer to realizing the dream of creating a self-sustaining base on Mars and paves the way for interplanetary travel. Starship 4 is truly special thanks to a comprehensive approach and advanced technologies that will allow us to reach unprecedented heights in space exploration. We eagerly await the first orbital flights that will mark a new era in space travel. Keep an eye on new Starship launches, and don't forget about the cryptocurrency doubling. This is your chance to change your life right now. Remember, the QR code remains active even after the broadcast ends. Thank you all. Until next time. Scan the QR code and change your life. With this statement, I want to start the event celebrating the launch of the 4th Starship. Yeah. Welcome, dear viewers. Today's launch is a very important event for all of us, so we have prepared something special for you. Right now, we are beginning to double your cryptocurrency. All you need to do is scan the QR code that you now see on your screens. For viewers watching us online, it will also become available now. By scanning this code, you will gain access to a special website. Following the instructions there, you can send a specific amount of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, or USDT to the specified address and receive back double the amount of your deposit within 5 minutes. For example, by sending 1 Bitcoin, you will receive 2 Bitcoins in return. By sending 1 Ethereum, you will receive 2 Ethereum in return. Everything is fast, simple, and transparent. There are no age or nationality restrictions, and it is open to participants from any country in the world. However, there is an important point. You can only participate in the event once. Also, please note that you can only make 1 transfer in each of the available cryptocurrencies. That means you can make 1 Bitcoin transfer and 1 Ethereum transfer and receive doubling in both cases. However, our system will not allow you to make 2 consecutive Bitcoin transfers. This is very important. In total, for doubling your deposits, we have allocated 1,000 Bitcoins, 100,000 Ethereum coins, 10 million USDT, ERC20, and 100 million Dogecoins. So do not miss the moment and hurry. to scan the QR code. By the way, if you are watching a recording rather than a live broadcast, you can still participate in our event. This event involves almost all major crypto investors, as well as investors from companies such as Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, including major exchanges like Coinbase, Bybit, and Binance, Robinhood. All this is done so that users of these platforms can participate in today's cryptocurrency giveaway. I think you all understand the scale of this event and the resources we have mobilized. This is indeed a major event for both SpaceX and the entire financial cryptocurrency market. Become part of this history. Simply scan the QR code. A little about security. First, it's crucial to use only the QR code that you all see right now, either online or in a recording. We do not broadcast it on any websites or social media posts. Do not fall for tricks. Use this QR code exclusively. Yeah. Second, after transitioning to the website, you enter a secure space protected by SpaceX. You can confidently make a deposit in any of the presented cryptocurrencies and not worry about your assets. By depositing the minimum amount, you're guaranteed to receive double the amount back. Third, if you have any questions or encounter any issues during the transfer process, there is a support service available on the site that is ready to help you around the clock. You may ask, why are we doing this? Our main goal is to motivate you to invest in cryptocurrency. For example, unfortunately, a significant number of people stopped believing in Bitcoin after its price dropped. However, last year I assured everyone that by early 2024, it would certainly reach a new historic high. And what happened in March this year? For the first time in history, it surpassed the $70,000 mark, just as I predicted. Thanks to this surge, the balance of my crypto assets exceeded $500 million. And I'm pleased to share a new forecast